started. I crammed a lot into this talk, so it's going to be difficult to get through it in 60 minutes. So we'll just jump right in. So today's talk's on FDA oversight of tobacco product investigations, whether you need an ITP or IND. In this talk, I'm assuming you already know what an IND is, but if you'd like to learn more about investigational new drug applications, check out our website. We have lots of resources available, and we also have a training program to learn more about that. So I'm Stephanie Pierce. I'm with the Office of Regulatory Affairs and Quality. And my slide doesn't want to move forward. All right, here we go. So our office, also known as ORAC, we provide lots of regulatory support to the Duke community. We provide consultation for regulatory strategy for drugs, biologics, medical devices, and tobacco products. We also provide full service for their submissions, such as pre-INDs, INDs, ITPs, and IDEs. And we also provide maintenance and support for these applications once they've proceeded. And we also have different educational resources like today's seminar, as well as our training program. And our policy team provides support with GMP manufacturing questions and quality assurance. So we have a great website with lots of templates available for regulatory documents. We keep these updated and add new ones as more FDA guidances come out. If you ever have a question, you can reach out to our general inbox at orac@duke.edu, or if you need assistance with your regulatory applications. We also have a mailing list if you're interested in keeping up to date with our events. We don't have too many, so you won't get too much spam in your inbox, but if you want to be one of the first to know, sign up for that. And if you are interested in checking out our training program, you can email the address on the screen, and our next one will be in September. So throughout this talk, I'm going to use a software called Pull Everywhere. If you want to pull this up on your phone or laptop, when I get to some of the case scenario questions, you can vote what you think the answer is. So when did FDA actually gain authority over tobacco? Oh, it'll pop up when I get to the questions too. So when did FDA actually gain authority over tobacco products? So in June 22nd, 2009, Congress enacted the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act, in which it provided FDA the authority to regulate tobacco products. Prior to that, it was in the hands of each individual state to make regulations for tobacco products. And then in August 2016, the Deeming Rule was put in place to broaden FDA's authority over all tobacco products and also added some additional restrictions. So back in the earlier 2000s, when Congress was enacting the Tobacco Control Act, they weren't aware so much of vapes and e-cigs and things like that. So as those became very popular, the Deeming Rule came out, broadening FDA's authority to also include those. And then the jurisdiction rule became effective in 2018, which clarified when a tobacco product would be regulated as a drug, medical device, or combination. FDA's definition of a tobacco product means anything made or derived from tobacco that's intended for human consumption and includes any component, part, or accessory. This does exclude the raw materials besides the tobacco itself, and it excludes anything that would be considered a drug, medical device, or combination as described in the FD&C Act. So the Deeming Rule extended FDA's authority, but originally the Act included cigarettes, cigarette tobacco, roll your own tobacco, and smokeless tobacco, and included the components, parts, and accessories of these products. And then the Deeming Rule extended that to also include electronic nicotine delivery systems, pipe tobacco, cigars, hookahs, and e-liquids, but it did exclude the accessories of these newly deemed products. So to be clear, components or parts are any software or assembly of materials intended or reasonably expected to alter or affect the tobacco product's performance, composition, constituents, or characteristics, or to be used with or for human consumption of tobacco products. Component or part does exclude accessories, and we'll talk about what accessories are in a second. So some examples of components or parts are the e-liquids, atomizers, batteries, flavors, hose, cooling attachments, etc. So accessories of these newly deemed products are any product intended or reasonably expected to be used with a tobacco product, but does not actually contain tobacco, and is not made from tobacco, and is not intended or reasonably expected to alter or affect the performance, composition, constituents, or characteristics, or if it does, it's solely to control the moisture or temperature of the product, or it provides an external heat source that initiates but does not maintain combustion. So some accessories would be ashtrays, tongs, clips, pouches, humidifiers, refrigerators, matches, and lighters. The FDA does distinguish that electronic heaters or charcoals that are used to prolong heating of a water pipe would be considered a component or part, not an accessory. So those would be a tobacco product. So when is a tobacco product regulated as a medical product? So if one of two circumstances. If the product is intended for use in the diagnosis of disease or other conditions, or in the cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease. This is pretty similar to what we think of as a drug or medical device definition, but specific to tobacco products, it can be if the product is intended to affect the structure or any function of the body in any way that's different from the effects related to nicotine that were commonly and legally claimed in the market of cigarettes and smokeless tobacco prior to March 21st, 2000. So if you were like us, we were wondering what exactly does that mean. So this dates back to a trial between FDA versus Brown and Williamson, in which it was established that things that are commonly and legally claimed for the effects of nicotine that would therefore not trigger FDA regulation as a medical product. These include satisfaction, pleasure, enjoyment, and refreshment. Additionally, you can make claims that a tobacco product provides the same effect as another tobacco product. You can make claims, get your nicotine fix, provide smokers delight, emotional feelings. So these are all things that you can claim for your tobacco product without triggering FDA regulatory oversight as a medical product. Things you cannot claim for a tobacco product: cessation or withdrawal relief, weight loss, maintaining memory, sedation, and stimulation. These ones would all require the product to be regulated as a medical product. So originally, these may have been claims that have been made about tobacco products in the past, but it's no longer acceptable. It would be considered a medical product. So a new tobacco product means anything that was commercially marketed in the United States as a tobacco product as of February 15th, 2007, or a modification of that product in which it was modified after February 15th, 2007. So those would be considered new. Yeah?
Oh, sorry, but just satisfaction of an addiction was allowed as a non-medical indication or claim, whatever. But relief of withdrawal is medical, but isn't satisfaction of an addiction part and parcel of relieving withdrawal?
I think it maybe depends on how you state it.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't tried to push on that, but we can try if you want. Okay, so if you have a new tobacco product, that means something that was not commercially available prior to 2007, or if you've modified something that was available prior to 2007. Those would be new or investigational. There's three pathways to market a new tobacco product. Either a pre-market tobacco application, a substantial equivalence report, or a substantial equivalence exemption. This would be for a really minor modification to a tobacco product. And a predicate tobacco product for a substantial equivalent pathway is something that was either commercially marketed as of 2007, or if it's been previously determined to be substantially equivalent. Okay, so we have a poll everywhere question. Do you want to pull this up? So there's two right answers here. So which two tobacco products would be considered lawfully marketed in the United States?
Let's see, it's supposed to show up on the...
Mm-hmm.
Oops.
Does it work from there?
I'm not getting it, but...
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go through each one. So cigarettes that were put on the market in 2009 with no regulatory filings, so that would not be considered lawfully marketed, so it'd have to be on the market prior to 2007 to not require a regulatory filing. Candy flavored cigarettes on the market prior to 2007. This isn't something I mentioned, but FDA did remove flavored cigarettes from the market besides menthol flavored cigarettes. Reduced nicotine cigarettes with an approved pre-market tobacco application. So as far as I know, there are not any reduced nicotine cigarettes that have been approved yet, but if they did have an approved pre-market tobacco application, they would be considered lawfully marketed, so this one's right. E-liquid containing nicotine and sildenafil imported from China. This would not be considered lawfully marketed. Sildenafil, or also known as Viagra, is considered a drug, so this would be a drug product. And cigars available on the market since 1998 would be considered a lawfully marketed tobacco product. Okay. So what if you wanted to study an unapproved tobacco product, so an investigational tobacco product? The FDA intends to propose regulations establishing conditions for exempting investigational tobacco products from the FDA Act requirements. Until then, investigational tobacco products are not exempt from applicable FDA Act requirements and require pre-market submission and tobacco product standards. So there are FDA regulations in place exempting investigational drugs and investigational medical devices from these requirements by either meeting exemption criteria or submitting an investigational new drug application or an investigational device exemption application to FDA for review and authorization to proceed with their study. But unfortunately, we don't have time to go into those types of applications today, so you can check out our website to learn more about that or sign up for a training program. So currently, there's no way to study an investigational tobacco product to be exempt of these requirements, but a sponsor may submit information voluntarily regarding a proposed use of an investigational tobacco product in an application to FDA for review and feedback. So this is known as the Investigational Tobacco Product Application, or ITP. These are not required, but they're strongly encouraged by the FDA. And the FDA has a draft guidance on how to put together an ITP. So this was recently revised at the end of February, so the information in this talk is nice and fresh. So why would you voluntarily submit an ITP for your study? FDA will work with sponsors to help ensure that the factors that FDA considers in making enforcement decisions are appropriately accounted for. So you'd hate to find out in the middle of your costly study that you need to stop and submit one of these applications and possibly have to modify your study. Also, you want to make sure that FDA is keeping in mind the things that are important to you as they make these enforcement decisions and evolve their thinking. Also, study teams will receive feedback on whether their study provides adequate human subject protection, will produce quality study data, and ensures that the product's not commercialized. Also, if you plan to market your product someday, FDA review of your ITP will ensure that your study is in alignment with FDA's current thinking and that your data was collected in accordance with FDA regulations for a pre-market tobacco application. So this is kind of a repeat of that second bullet, but the things that FDA considers the most important to an ITP and what they're really going to be looking for is that you're controlling the distribution of the tobacco product. It's only being distributed to qualified investigators, that it's clearly labeled that it's limited to investigational use only, that your protocol provides protection of human subjects, that your study is designed to ensure quality and integrity of your data, and they want to make sure that you're not commercializing your product in any way. So this is a couple quick definitions before we jump into the content of an ITP. So a sponsor in light of an ITP is an individual, company, academic institution, or other organization that takes responsibility for and initiates the trial. We often think of the sponsor as being the person that funds the study, but in the case of an ITP, it's really whichever person is taking responsibility for and initiating the trial. So an investigator is the individual who conducts the trial and under whose immediate direction a product is administered or dispensed. If there's a team of individuals, you would select a lead investigator. And then there's sponsor investigators. This is an individual who both initiates and conducts the investigation. We have lots of these at Duke and other academic institutions. So we're going to jump into the ITP application. So first you want to provide administrative information. As part of the ITP draft guidance, they do include an example of a form. Currently, there is not one available that captures all this information that you can fill out from the FDA, but we usually include this information in our cover letter, or it's possible you can make your own form, especially if you're planning to do a lot of these submissions. So first, you want to make sure and clearly identify what you're submitting. So in the case of your initial ITP, proposed use of an investigational tobacco product and a clinical investigation. If it's a subsequent submission, like a protocol amendment, you want to clearly identify what you're submitting. Include the name of the sponsor, and if it's a company, you want to include the authorized representative as well. Their title, and you want to include a physical as well as a mailing address. The Center for Tobacco Products very regularly sends things to you through the mail, so you want to make sure that you can receive that information. Include your email address, telephone number, and fax number. Date of your submission. Name, brand, and product code of your tobacco product. Category and subcategory of the tobacco product. Any cross-references to previous submissions. If you've already had a formal meeting with FDA concerning this product, you want to reference that here. Or if a company is making the product for you and they're providing a letter of authorization to cross-reference their master file that provides all the product information, you want to list that here. Include the name and title of the primary investigator for each of your study sites, the person responsible for conducting the trial, name and title of the person responsible for reviewing and evaluating, any transfer of obligations to a clinical research organization, and a signature of the sponsor. Any questions about that section? All right, next you want to include the table of contents. Pretty self-explanatory, but really any regulatory filing 5 or more pages should have a table of contents. Next, tobacco product information. You want to fully describe the design of your product, include pictures, schematics, and make sure the FDA fully understands how your tobacco product works and what it is. A list of your product components, parts, ingredients, and additives, and include their quantities. Harmful or potentially harmful constituents, the quantities of each of these, and also include those that could be generated by the ITP, specifications, and a description of their function within the product. If you're using a legally marketed product that you're just modifying for your study, focus on describing the modifications to that product. You don't need to reinvent the wheel and fully describe a product they already know about. Focus on how you're modifying it. Next, manufacturing controls information. So product components, parts, and accessories, include the manufacturer for each of those, unless it's one manufacturer making all of it, include their name and address. A detailed description of the methods and facilities, controls and analytical testing that's been done in process and for release of the final product, and packaging, storage, and product stability. If this is a brand new product and you don't have any stability data yet, you can include a plan to test the stability, and that way FDA can review that and provide feedback. As long as you commit to provide the results as they become available, that's often sufficient enough to move forward. Previous experience with the tobacco product. So any product testing, bench testing that you've done, non-clinical laboratory studies, clinical investigations, and any information on similar products, especially if this is something new and there's no information available yet. You can describe some of the other products and how your product differs from that. And so, oops, went too far. So those three sections, the product information, manufacturing, and previous experience, if you have a letter of authorization to reference another material, often those three sections can be covered by that letter of authorization, depending on what information they have. So next, study protocols. I'm not going to go into too much detail about study protocols. We do have some templates available on our website. They're not specifically tailored to tobacco products, but I'm just going to go over some highlights from the tobacco product guidance of what's important to the FDA for these types of applications. So title, objectives, hypotheses, endpoints, success criteria. Fully describe the ITP, info on its risks and the significance of your study design, where you plan to conduct the study, type of control and methods to minimize bias, description of your population, methods for recruitment, number of subjects, inclusion-exclusion criteria, dose administration and how you plan to use the ITP, how you have the participants use the product, is it chewed, is it swallowed, is it smoked, etc. Data collection procedures, timeline for study follow-up and assessments, risk assessment, including procedures and testing to mitigate those risks, and also your stopping rules for the study. Sample case report forms. So this is something we wouldn't typically submit with a study protocol, but I think the FDA is a little more concerned about how you describe tobacco products in your, I skipped the wrong part, sorry. So case report forms, since these are typically done outside of the clinic, these types of studies, they want to make sure that you have forms to collect patient information, especially adverse events. So they just want to see how you're going to collect that information and keep records of it, and that should be fine. Steps taken to protect subjects and plans to report adverse experiences. Name and address of where lab testing will be performed, and a statistical analysis plan. So most of it's pretty straightforward, things that you would typically include in a protocol. Next, you want to list all of your study sites, the lead investigator for each site, and a statement of their qualifications. We typically include a CV to meet this requirement. Copy of the packaging and labeling provided to investigators or study participants. Make sure to include on that label that the product's limited to investigational use only. Investigators brochure. We do have a template available on our website. It's specifically for drugs, but it can be modified for this purpose. They're not required for sponsor investigator-initiated studies, but they are if you have multiple sites or if it's a sponsored study. And so this is basically like a mini ITP. It gives the investigator all the information on the tobacco product that they would need in order to conduct the study. Copy of the informed consent and procedures. Recruitment materials. And the reviewing IRB information for each site. So I think a few people in the audience has probably worked on an IND before, so I'm going to do a comparison of the information that you would include in an ITP application compared to an IND. I think if you get stuck in some sections of an ITP, it might be helpful to look at some more information that's available for INDs to help figure out the best thing to include in there. So administrative info, this is basically the type of info that you provide in the Form 1571. Sections in green, so the chemistry, manufacturing, control information is similar to the product info, manufacturing, and packaging sections of the ITP. In yellow, so the farm talks and the previous human experience is what you would include in the previous experience section of an ITP. Red, so with the new revised ITP guidance, they kind of smushed all of the introductory and investigational plan into the protocol part for an ITP. I think a lot of these products, they might be used differently in each protocol, or each study protocol might drive the investigational plan. So for whatever reason, they don't have a section specifically describing the product besides in the protocol as far as how they plan to use it. And then investigator brochure. So again, this is only required if it's not a sponsor investigator study. And recruitment materials isn't something that's required to be submitted with INDs, but I think the FDA is specifically interested in making sure that the product's not commercialized in any way or described in any way that implies that the product's safe or things like that. So this is just a repeat of the slide I showed you before. So once you have your ITP together, you want to make sure that it covers at least these 4 points that the FDA consider when they review these, making sure that the tobacco product doesn't get in the wrong hands, you're protecting your subjects, you're ensuring the quality and integrity of your data, and your product's not being commercialized. So how do you actually submit an ITP? The Center for Tobacco Products prefers that these get submitted through the CTP portal. So in order to submit it through the portal, you need an account. Our office has the account of the industry account manager, so you'd have to reach out then to get a user account, but we'd be happy to submit it for you if you're from Duke. You can use FDA's free e-submitter software to package your application. You would just input a PDF of your cover letter in your application, and you would select for submission type CTP transmittal form, and this gives the option of a 910G investigational use when you get to the content section, and then it'll package your submission in order to be able to put through the portal. So these can still be submitted on paper or electronic media, and then they'd be shipped to FDA, or you can submit via the electronic gateway. But they do prefer that it's submitted through the CTP portal if possible. So FDA expects to review and respond within 60 days. We've had pretty good luck with that. Within a few weeks, you should receive an acknowledgement letter. It will include the FDA submission tracking number for each of your investigational tobacco products, the date they received your application, the assigned protocol number, and the contact information for your FDA project manager. The project manager is the person that you'll be corresponding with throughout the review, and this is who you would reach out with any questions. The CTP will typically schedule 2 teleconferences. The first will be to discuss recommended changes they'd like to see before completing their review. And then often the second one is just to talk about some more minor changes and hopefully to confirm that you can proceed with your study. We've had pretty good luck with that. And then they'll send you an official advice information letter saying that they have no concerns with your study and you can move forward. It also includes suggestions to help strengthen your study design, but these are just suggestions. You do not have to incorporate them. They're up to you. All right, we have a poll everywhere question. So I didn't go over this yet. You have to guess, or if you've read the draft guidance, which submission is not included in FDA's recommendation for maintaining an ITP once it's in place. Yeah?
Andrea, can I just ask a question about prevention of commercialization? Would that include making sure that if participants are dispensed products that they don't resell them or divert them? Is that included in the whole concept or not really?
Not really. I think maybe if it was a product that the FDA felt there was reason to believe that would happen, they might discuss with you ways to, protect from that happening, or making sure the participants sign something saying that they won't, or...
Right, because it's basically that you as an investigator are not commercializing.
Right. It's more like the recruitment materials that you give out to get participants to join the trial. It doesn't commercialize the product in any way, or that you're not trying to sell it on the side or something. Okay, so for this one, it's annual reports that you do not have to submit. So as a part of maintaining an ITP once it's in effect, the FDA would like to see protocol amendments. So if you make changes to your protocol, or you add a new protocol, you want to send that to them. Updates to the investigators, so either adding new investigators or replacing investigators, let them know if it was for cause. Changes to the investigational tobacco product or the manufacturing procedures, and also adverse experience reports. So those are all the things FDA wants you to keep sending them once your ITP is in place, although they did not mention annual reports, so that's something that you currently will not have to worry about if you have an ITP. So since adverse experience reports are really important, I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail. So if a subject has a serious and unexpected adverse experience associated with use of the ITP, these should be reported within a few days. If it's serious or unexpected, it should be reported within a few weeks. I'm not being wishy-washy by saying a few, that's really what it says in the guidance. So you want to supply FDA with a complete case report form that describes the event, and also provide any follow-up information if it becomes available. So FDA's definition of serious means any experience at any dose that results to any of the following. So death, life-threatening, inpatient hospitalization, prolongation of a hospitalization, persistent or significant disability, incapacity, or congenital anomaly or birth defect, or other medical event that's required to prevent one of the above outcomes. Unexpected is considered an experience in which the nature, severity, or frequency of an effect is using an ITP is not consistent with known or foreseeable risks associated with the product or the research procedures. So I have a case scenario so we can vote when we think we should report this. So a clinical study, subjects are being administered decreasing levels of nicotine for 3 months. The first month, subjects will receive cigarettes with a fourth of the amount of nicotine, or half the amount of nicotine. Second month, it'll be a fourth, and then the last month will be very low nicotine cigarettes. Subjects are allowed to smoke as many or a few as they feel necessary while recording the numbers smoked. During the second month, a subject reports peripheral numbness and tingling. The patient is discontinued from being provided the investigational product, but stays on study for safety follow-up. After 2 months, the numbness has not resolved or improved. The investigators for sure indicates that cigarettes can cause peripheral numbness that resolves within a few days. The investigator has evaluated the event as probably related to the reduced nicotine cigarettes. All right, so serious but not unexpected, report in a few weeks. Serious and unexpected, report within a few days. Not serious or unexpected, it doesn't need to be reported. Or unexpected but not serious, report within a few weeks. So sometimes we get a little bit of a debate with this question. So it'd really be up to the investigator and the sponsor's ultimate decision to decide whether or not it meets the criteria for serious. Depending on the severity of the numbness, this could be considered serious. It's definitely considered unexpected, and it should be reported. So depending on whether or not they decide if it's serious, should be whether it should be reported in a few weeks or a few days. Yeah?
So is it necessary that it is attributed to the product use
Yes.
to be reported?
Yes.
Okay. Because adverse event can mean anything, but
yeah.
if this is specifically attributable to the...
Right. So you should probably report those to your IRB, but they want to see things that are attributable to the investigational tobacco product. Is there another question? Okay. So also part of having an ITP is maintaining your study records. They ask that you maintain records for at least 4 years after the study's been completed or terminated, or if you have a marketing product or a marketing application. Keep records of receipt, shipment, or disposition of the tobacco product. Keep records of correspondence with sponsors, monitors, investigators, the IRB, and the FDA. Keep records of signed investigator agreements and financial disclosure. There's an FDA guidance on financial disclosure if you want to know more about that. These forms you will not have to submit to your ITP application, but you want to keep them if you ever plan to market your product someday. And also keep records of your adverse experience reports. All right, so once you're all done with an ITP, if you choose to terminate, withdraw, and activate your study before it's completed, notify FDA within a few weeks and include your reasoning for closure. Provide any plans to continue monitoring your subjects, especially if there's any reason to believe that there'll be long-term effects. And inform your investigators if the closure was based on safety concerns. All right, now we're going to jump into the drug or tobacco product section. So if you're not sure whether or not you need an IND or an ITP, so an investigational new drug application, or an ITP. So FDA's default is that an investigational product made or derived from tobacco would be an ITP application unless the intended use of the product bring it within the definition of a drug or medical device or combination. Just to be clear, drugs are articles intended for use in the diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, prevention of disease in man or animals or a substance other than food intended to affect the structure or any function of the body. So an investigational drug would require an investigational new drug application unless it meets certain exemption criteria, but we're not going to get into that today. So a tobacco product is regulated as a drug, medical device, or combination. If it's intended for use in diagnosis disease, conditions, cure, mitigate, treat, or prevent disease, or if the product is intended to affect the structure or any function of the body that's different than the effects related to nicotine that weren't commonly or legally claimed prior to 2000. So for the purpose of protocols under review, FDA considers the purpose of the study and the study hypotheses and objectives when they're deciding which application it best fits under. Particularly the primary objective versus secondary objectives. So if you have a therapeutic endpoint as your primary objective, you're going to fall into the IND category. But then again, ITP studies do require some therapeutic endpoints, looking at withdrawal and things like that. So it's okay to have those as long as they're secondary endpoints and they're not the focus of the study. Also, what is the nature of the product being studied? Is it actually made or derived from tobacco? If you're administering some substance to mimic the effects of tobacco, this would be a drug study and it may require an IND. And is the study part of a marketing development plan? Is it for a drug or tobacco product? So if you're planning to market as a tobacco product, they may help you change your study so it fits better under an ITP. All right, so we're going to go through a couple case scenario questions. Running a little low on time, but stay if you can. So we'll vote whether or not it needs an IND or an ITP, talk about why, and then for a couple of them, we'll talk about how you can modify your objectives to better fit under the other type of application. So a scientist is developing a new lower nicotine cigarette and would like to conduct a trial to determine if adult smokers enjoy lower nicotine cigarettes as much as their regular brand. The primary objective of the study is to determine if the participants enjoy these lower nicotine cigarettes as much as their regular brands. Their secondary objectives to determine the levels of withdrawal, if there's a reduction in the desire to smoke, changes in the number of cigarettes smoked, etc. And the scientist is interested in marketing this tobacco product. All right, what do you think? IND or ITP for this one? Okay, not too hard. So the primary objective is comparing two types of tobacco products. They do have some secondary objectives that have therapeutic endpoints, but that's okay for an ITP application as long as it's not the focus. All right, next one. An investigator is planning a study comparing effects on the brain after smoking regular nicotine cigarettes versus very low nicotine cigarettes using MRI. The primary objective is to determine how brain activity changes during the physical sensation of smoking with or without nicotine. Secondary objectives are looking at withdrawal centers of the brain. This investigator is not interested in marketing this product. Okay. So for this one, we actually reached out to FDA with a similar scenario for feedback, and they said that it could fit under an ITP. So we felt like this could be considered structure function, but made a claim that it would fit under an ITP, and they agreed. And we kept pushing them for some rationalization, and they scheduled a teleconference with us, and it said that this is with a NIDA product, so they know that those will never be marketed, and that when you're looking at things like structure and function, that those could probably fit under an ITP as long as you're not having a therapeutic endpoint. Yeah?
Well, and you mentioned, health-related outcomes being secondary, but in a classic kind of switching study where, let's say, reduction in smoking behavior, carbon monoxide, and so forth is the primary objective, but where we're not treating nicotine dependence, we're just transferring their disease of nicotine dependence from cigarettes to an alternative product. My understanding is the FDA says that's still an ITP kind of scenario. Is that?
I think so.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want that to be like any therapeutic endpoint to be your primary objective.
Yeah.
So they might work with you to change that.
Because in other words, I think they're now saying that harm reduction is not a therapeutic endpoint.
Okay.
It's just a way of satisfying your nicotine addiction with a reduction in exposure to toxins. I mean, that's what some of their CTP
Yeah,
said.
I think it depends on how you would want to state that as the intended use of the product and how you would use that information. So I think if you were saying that it was to quit smoking, then that would require an IND.
Right. Well, see, and there was this SR&T a couple of years ago. I guess there was a discussion of CEDAR people and CTP people, and that nuance of the difference between quitting smoking and quitting nicotine, which is a therapeutic endpoint, versus transferring your nicotine dependency from cigarettes to, let's say, e-cigarettes, which is then under CTP, is kind of a fuzzy, but that's how they try to explain it.
Yeah. Okay, great. Were you at that talk?
Yeah.
Awesome. So scenario number 3, smoke quit tablets are FDA approved as a smoking cessation aid. Preliminary tests in rodents indicate that inhalation of smoke quit works better at decreasing the need to smoke. Physician scientists would like to test whether smoke quit added to e-liquids would improve smoking cessation efforts by patients trying to quit. After receiving a grant, they are putting together a protocol to administer smoke quit through vaping versus patients taking oral smoke quit tablets and vaping placebo e-liquid. The primary objective is to test if vaped smoke quit performs better than tablet smoke quit for smoking cessation. The physician scientist considers that study preliminary and currently does not have plans to develop this product. All right, IND or ITP? Looks like most people are picking IND. So smoke quit would be considered a drug in the study, and they're modifying, so this would most likely require an IND. It definitely wouldn't fall in the ITP category anymore since smoke quit is a smoking cessation aid. All right, number 4, a physician is interested in determining the level of nicotine administered via e-liquid has the same effects as that level administered via cigarettes in heavy smokers. Participants that consistently smoke 2 packs of X-level nicotine cigarettes per day will be recruited for this study. The primary objectives determine any short-term health benefits of vaping compared to smoking. Secondary objectives will be to determine if the route of administration of nicotine influences the amount of nicotine desired. The physician does not have any plans to develop the e-liquid, but the tobacco company that manufactures the product is funding the study and providing the e-liquid for free. Okay, so for this one, I think with the short-term health benefits being the primary objective, might start falling into the IND category. But it's possible that FDA would want this to go under an ITP and work with the physician to modify the study. From the first bullet, it seems apparent that they're comparing two different products and not looking at short-term health benefits. So depending on the overall goal of this study, it could be modified to fit under an ITP. Yeah?
And then doesn't it depend whether the e-liquid is one that was on the market as of August 8, 2016?
Yeah.
Because if it was on the market before, then you don't...
How many were on the market before then?
Quite a few.
Yeah.
Actually, Juul, for instance, and there was a huge rush to get products on the market, like by August 8th.
Yeah,
Even if they
bet.
weren't.
Yeah, so it was on the market prior to that, but depending on how you were using that, maybe you should have an ITP if you wanted to make health benefit claims for that product. You might want some FDA oversight to make those kinds of claims. All right, this is the last one. So an inventor has created a new kind of hookah that increases the overall airflow. Before submitting a marketing application, they'd like to test whether participants enjoy their hookah better than traditional hookahs. Participants will use their own tobacco after a short demonstration. Only participants that currently use hookahs on a regular basis will be enrolled. The primary objective is to test subject preference. The secondary objective is to look at airflow, breath samples, vital signs, and they also want to collect information on usability of the new product. And the inventor plans to market this hookah someday.
Oops, I made a mistake.
Oh, no, you're stuck with that. FDA is going to get you. Okay, I threw in the neither just to trick you. So the participants will be using their own tobacco, but the hookah itself would be considered a tobacco product. And so this is new, then it would be investigational. Since they're looking at subject preference, this is a good example of an ITP. And since the inventor plans to market this product someday, they could get some really valuable feedback from FDA before submitting their marketing application. All right, just some overall conclusions. So the study objectives and hypotheses, as well as the stated purpose, are key parts of differentiating between needing an ITP application or an IND. Smoking cessation, withdrawal, and cravings are frequently used measures involving the use of tobacco products, and these are acceptable in the context of an ITP study, although typically as secondary outcome measures. And there is an FDA presentation that you were mentioning. They don't have the audio of this, but they have the slides available online. This was put on by the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research and the Center for Tobacco Products, where they discussed when you would need an ITP versus an IND. And if you're not sure, you can reach out to FDA and give them an overview of your study, and they're pretty quick to reply. But they don't necessarily explain why. But you can always come to our office and we'll help with that. So again, thank you so much for coming. Check out our website if you want to use our templates or join the mailing list, or if now you're really excited about INDs, you can sign up for our training programs. All right, thank you. All right, if you want to ask a few questions. Are there any online? Oh, go ahead.
On the voluntary nature of the ITP filing, have you, what kinds of enforcement actions would be likely to happen if if you or a sponsor determined, thought that ITP was not necessary, and then the FDA said it was, what would be the likely worst-case scenario?
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Legal action?
For the most part, I mean, if FDA came and said they disagreed with the assessment, and obviously they don't currently have the authority to require you to submit an ITP, but they do have the authority to prevent you from introducing into interstate commerce an investigational tobacco product that is not the subject of an approved marketing application. So they could, in essence, stop your study because they just, not allow you to make the product available anymore. Outside of that, there wouldn't probably be too many legal repercussions unless you continue to do it when sort of getting that advice from them. And obviously, if they would probably encourage you to submit an ITP so that you could continue your study.
Right.
We've had some examples, not necessarily with tobacco products, but even with drug products, where maybe an investigator starts a study thinking that the use of an investigational product, investigational drug product qualifies for exemption, and then later throughout the course of the study, maybe the risk profile changes or there's new information learned, and we've reached out to the agency and kind of made them aware that we have questions about a study where a product was being administered under an IND exemption, but we wanted a risk evaluation. And in the end, they made the assessment that the study actually required an IND. So we just went in, they put the study on hold, so we submitted the IND, but within 30 days, we got the IND in effect and they were able to continue.
Okay, any other questions?
The comment about interstate commerce reminds me of when at another talk by Cedar, and a question came up, well, what if you make a tobacco product entirely within the state of North Carolina or Virginia or something where there's no interstate commerce? In theory, FDA has no jurisdiction. And their reply was, well, make sure none of the glassware you use cross state lines or any of the solvents used cross. So it's a broad definition of interstate.
Exactly. They find a way to, as you said, interpret that very broadly to ensure they have oversight.
Anything else? Yeah?
Any new vision on using synthetic nicotine?
Oh, that's a good question. There's a Q&A on FDA's website where they pretty much say they're going to look at that on a case-by-case basis. Because there's e-liquids that don't have nicotine in them as well. And so even though it's like, well, you could add nicotine to it or, make it a tobacco product. So it just says that they'll look at those on a case-by-case basis. So they're not really willing to give those up, but maybe you had a good lawyer or something like that. Yeah.
And I guess it's implicit or even explicit in the definition of a tobacco product for human use that one is free to do any laboratory studies on anything, then it sounds like, without approval.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not going to go to a human being.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah.
Because at one time there was at least I felt some confusion about whether you needed approval to go into the lab and inject nicotine into a cigarette or something.
No.
But,
they have some information on non-clinical studies in the guidance, but basically they said that you can reach out to them if you have questions, or you could have a meeting with them if you want some help with your study, but they're not really providing oversight of that. Okay, anything else? You can always reach out to us later at our general inbox. And if you're considering an ITP or you're not sure, you can also reach out to us as well. All right, thank you for coming.
thanks again.
Mm-hmm.